Today on Locked On Rockies, the Rockies head home, but their first matchup of this homestand is against a team that their strengths can really exploit, the Colorado Rockies.
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 19th day of April in the year 2024. I'm your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, which is available on your favorite streaming services and on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where you can be part of the show. You can fire off your Rockies hot takes. You can let me know what's on your mind when it comes to the Colorado Rockies. You all have been so great with supporting the show and letting me know what's on your mind with the Rockies. Really appreciate all of you folks joining the show, tuning into the show, and enjoying all of the content that we put out there for you all. Really appreciate all of that. Thank you for making us, of course, your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code all lowercase Locked On MLB, and that's not part of the code, just all lowercase, Locked On MLB, for a first deposit match up to $100. All right. Today on the show, we are going to preview the series a little bit, and I also just kind of want to talk about the fact that this Mariners team, their strengths can exploit the Rockies' weaknesses in this series. We're going to talk about that. I was also on Seattle radio yesterday, so I got that segment. So we're going to play that in segment number 2, and we'll wrap up with the real way. If we're looking for the Achilles heel of this Mariners pitching staff, home runs seem to be the issue here, at least to start the season, because across the board, the Mariners are a very, very solid rotation, and the Rockies are getting the top of it. They're not escaping by finding the back half. This is your number one, your 1 through 3, taking on your 1 through 3 here when it comes to this. And the Mariners pitching staff is elite. I think the Mariners pitching staff is one of the best in baseball. And while they might not be ranking at number 1, number 2, and everything, they are on the right side of a lot of categories when it comes to pitching. So 169 innings pitched for the Mariners pitching staff. This is the whole team I'm just going with, by the way. 9-10 record here with a 3.93 ERA. In that time, they have I'm sorry, I think it was, is this one shutouts? Yeah, they do have a shutout. One shutout in this time. They have given up 74 earned runs, 24 home runs, 42 walks, with 173 strikeouts and a whip of 1.11 and an average of 229. That's where you're looking at right there. This Rockies team is strikeout prone and doesn't walk enough for you to think that they can take advantage of that, of the potential of a whip of a slightly above 1. If this Rockies team is just getting blown away and striking out and striking out and striking out like we know that they possibly like they can, it's gonna be a long weekend. Because, like I said, it's not a Mariners team that get to the bullpen, you'll be okay. Every arm that the Mariners are going to bring out in this series is going to have great stuff. The biggest strength of this Mariners team is pitching. And I think a big thing to just compare it to here is the Rockies themselves. The Rockies pitching staff, 4-15, 6.01 ERA here in that time. No shutouts. 108 earned runs given up compared to Seattle's 74. The Rockies have given up 34 more runs than the Mariners pitching staff this year. They've also walked 36 more batters than the Mariners, and they've struck out 43 less batters. So when you're comparing the staffs, it's night and day. And I know that's not crazy, but that strength is coming to a place where they don't play a lot. The weather isn't going to be super warm and it's super friendly and such this weekend. It seems like the Rockies have to attack. If they continue the trend of getting behind early, they will be in trouble. The hill to climb back into ball games is going to just get steeper and steeper as the Mariners pitchers can continue to go through the game and continue to get in a rhythm. You cannot doubt this rotation. They are that good. And in my opinion, if you're looking to surprise and shock and fix this and snap this skid, it would be impressive to do so against a team that dominated you last year. I don't know if any folks, you remember how bad the series was against the Mariners last year. I do, because I was sitting and watching it in person. But the first game wasn't too bad. Herman threw a gem in the first game, actually. But regardless, the Mariners are a very good pitching team. The Rockies struggle against good pitching. This is, again, another moment where it's like we can hit the qualifiers. Oh, it's a good rotation. They did this. The Rockies have to adjust and they have to attack. They have to be aggressive. They have to score first. They have to take good at-bats because they're going to strike you out. Reminder, the Rockies have struck out 40 less batters than the Mariners this season. The Mariners, in terms of getting strikeouts, are 8th in the league. And they are only 16 behind the Red Sox when it comes to leading the league in striking batters out. The Mariners' whip is the best in baseball. The Mariners' batting average, pitching staff batting average against them is top 10 in baseball. This is a really a recipe for disaster for the Rockies at this point in the season. When you're facing this level of pitching, if you want to make a statement, if you want to change the narrative here, is where like Spilly said, we're entering in our next 10 games. We've done 10. We're doing our next 10. We've done 20. Now we're compartmentalizing here into our next 10. If you want to start out, you have no time. You have no flexibility for the Rockies to start slow in this series. You got to go out and you got to chase batters away. Especially because Luis Castillo is straightening himself out a little bit. He's certainly not pitching at the rate that he can, but it ain't going to get easy for this Rockies staff throughout this weekend. And I wish I could sit here and say I'm confident that the Rockies can get it done, but I mean, to be totally honest, with the state of the Rockies offense and with the state of the at bats right now, I'm seeing 3 straight double-digit strikeout games. I mean, it's really par for the course for the Rockies at this point right now, but this pitching staff and a team that is really looking to take advantage of the fact that no one in the AL West has come out to start off with a strong start for this season. No one has come out fired up, ready to go from this AL West so far. Pretty crazy. Remember, I mean, the Rockies, as bad as they have been, they're still only 2 wins away from the Houston Astros. If that's crazy, Houston's only won 6 games this year, which is crazy to think about. I just worry when I look at this series and especially with how last week went. I just, man, this is a bad matchup. This is a tough matchup for the Rockies. Because the flip side is you could take solace in the fact that, well, the Mariners weren't hitting. The Mariners weren't, their offense wasn't doing much to start this season. The offense continues to be one of the problems for the Mariners. But the Mariners just outscored the Reds in their sweep by a score of, 17-5. They just swept the Reds 17-5. This team can score. This team has offensive potential. I know they don't come to Coors Field all that much, but this team still has offense. And especially if they're able to stifle your offense with elite pitching. If the Mariners can stay hot, if the Mariners can be the team that benefits from the Coors Field versus gets ran out of town because of it, then it's going to be a tough sledding. It's going to be even worse for the Rockies here as they continue to try to fight their way out of a 5-game losing streak. This is a series where if the offense gets rolling, then it'll be a nice boost of confidence for this club. Because right now, I think this pitching staff for the Mariners is good enough to handle this Rockies offense. So the Rockies, if they want to react, if they want to respond, How can they make Coors Field an uncomfortable place to play for the Seattle Mariners, an unfamiliar place to a lot of these players, and a place that's got quite the reputation? The Rockies need to be the one taking advantage of Coors Field and being the good home team that they hope to be. Whereas the Mariners are looking at and saying, we can set this team down in order. We have the pitching to do it. Well, what do you think, folks, of the matchup? Let me know in the comments below. What's on your mind when it comes to Rockies Mariners this weekend? I wonder if I can actually even watch the games. I paid for MLB TV, but I got stupid blackouts still. Regardless, it's going to be annoying. Anywho, let's go to the radio. I was on the radio here in Seattle last night. I want to play that segment for you here. Curtis Rogers there broke down some Mariners ball and some Rockies ball. We're going to do that coming up here in segment number 2. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes FanDuel. FanDuel has got you covered for all your sportsbook needs when it comes to playoff mecca. We got NBA, we got NHL playoffs right here, baseball in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150. Yes, $150, win or lose. You can bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon for your chance at $150 in bonus bets. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, I was on Seattle Sports 710 yesterday, and we are going to play that.
For number 2 of Extra Innings, I am joined now by someone whose desk is about 100 feet away from our control room here at Seattle Sports, but also he hosts the Locked On Rockies podcast, which you can subscribe to on YouTube. It's Paul Holden who joins me now on the Emerald Queen Casino Sportsbook Hotline. Paul, how you doing this Thursday night? And I say that knowing that you cover the Rockies, so things probably could be better for you.
Certainly could be better in terms of baseball, but things aren't too bad, and at least there are some small things to hold on to hope for the Rockies fans. But on the baseball side of things, they could be going much better, Curtis.
Yeah, I'm looking at these NL West standings, and the Rockies now 4-15 to start the season. Not the start you want to get off to. If you're looking at this Rockies team, Paul, and just kind of any reason for optimism right now, what is it to you that you are watching night in and night out and like, yes, this is the guy, or these are the guys that I'm looking at and saying their progress is what I'm most concerned about this season?
You're going to learn the name Ezequiel Tovar this weekend. He's the Rockies' starting shortstop. He's one of the youngest players in baseball, and he is going to be special. I don't think it's the most fair comparison, but when you're thinking of the Rockies, Julio Rodriguez, the young, exciting guy to really buy into and be really pumped about, and someone who also has signed a big deal with the Rockies. They basically signed him to an extension that covers all of arbitration for the young shortstop. He is a young, mature ball player that knows how to handle things, and he's 22 years old. I mean, he's really shown an advanced maturity, as well as being one of the Rockies' best players. In fact, batting leadoff for the Rockies in their latest games. Nolan Jones is still a name that you're going to want to keep an eye on. He's had a really slow start to the year, but he's someone that could be one of the better players in baseball. Last year had similar numbers to Corbin Carroll, and in less time played than Corbin Carroll as well. And the Rockies center fielder, Brenton Doyle, he won the Gold Glove last year for center field defense. He is an elite defender, but the story about him going in last year and going into the year was that he couldn't hit. He was batting sub 200. However, this year he seems to make some really great adjustments, and he has been really good at the plate. So there are some interesting young guys for the Rockies, but the big question here, the other things, the frustrating things continue. Chris Bryant's back on the IL. Some of the veterans are underperforming, and of course, pitching continues to be a problem.
Yeah, I wanted to get into the pitching with you because the Rockies for pretty much their entire existence, have struggled with pitching. And, there have been a couple of guys kind of popping up here and there that have had good seasons. Ubaldo Jimenez, probably the best season that any Rockies pitcher has ever had. But how do you think the Rockies need to kind of go about combating Coors Field? Because obviously it is the hitter's haven in Major League Baseball, which works against any sort of pitching staff the Rockies have had out there, because I just feel like going up against Coors Field as any pitcher, whether you're wearing a Rockies uniform or not, there's no way you can build any confidence knowing that your ERA at that park is probably going to be higher than it is anywhere else.
Honestly speaking, give me the Mariners rotation. I mean, I know that's an easy way to say it, but the Rockies have built, and they're dealing with two key injuries to their starting rotation right now as well. German Marquez and Antonio Senzatella, both going down with Tommy John last year. Antonio Senzatella, actually, the day he returns after from tearing his ACL, he goes down with Tommy John after that start. The Rockies have too many pitch to contact guys. Their philosophy is induce weak contact, and Kyle Freeland, their number one, he hasn't been able to do that as well as usual this year, and it's kind of been part of a regression over the past couple of years, but he's a specialist in getting ground balls. So is Cal Quantrill and Austin Gomber. It's all about inducing weak contact for the Rockies. At least that's how they've built this staff. For me, it's incredibly frustrating because while I like the approach as having it, having Kyle Freeland be your specialist in that, it shouldn't be the same thing over and over and over again. There's too often the Rockies pitchers are missing their spots. Their velocity isn't up to snuff, and they're getting crushed. When they get hit, it's not a lot of dink and dunks. It's a lot of 100+ miles an hour off the bat. It's a lot of home runs given up. And that also mixed in with the fact that they're not as consistent when they need to be in terms of hitting their spots. So for me, to fix the Rockies, I think it requires a mix. Why the Rockies made the postseason in back-to-back years was because their pitchers were doing such a good job at not only handling Coors Field, but going out on the road and keeping them in ball games. But it's because they had different styles. German Marquez can get you 8 strikeouts a game. Kyle Freeland can go 6 innings and give up 3 hits, but it's, and they might be hitting it, but there's a lot of, he can get double plays with the best of them in the game. But the problem is it's just, one, the injuries, and now it's too much buying into that pitch to contact philosophy, when in reality, they need flamethrowers like the Mariners have.
Paul Holden of the Locked On Rockies podcast joining us here on Extra Innings. And Paul, I'm looking at this Rockies roster right now, and it's a weird mix of guys who have been there for a long time. Charlie Blackmon, Ryan McMahon, you mentioned Senzatella and Marquez, who aren't available right now, but you've also got guys like you mentioned, Ezequiel Tovar, Nolan Jones, Brenton Doyle, guys who haven't been there very long. What is it that they're building? Because it's weird to see so many veteran names. Chris Bryant, I mean, obviously he's only been there for 3 seasons now, but he's had his fair share of injuries in a Rockies uniform. Like, what are the Rockies building towards? Because it's really hard to see from somebody who doesn't cover this team night in and night out.
It's hard for us to see too, Curtis. I mean, here's the deal. The Rockies finally made their first ever moves that looked towards what most people refer to as a rebuild last year at the trade deadline. This team is usually not active at the trade deadline, but they moved on. I believe they made like 5 or 6 trades at the trade deadline last year. For some reason, the Angels were like super pumped on Rockies players that they had last year, and the Rockies sent a bunch of people to Anaheim there. But I think this team really believes in some of the young guys they have. Dick Monfort has continued, the owner of the Colorado Rockies, has continued to preach his confidence in these guys. But it's really a year where the veterans of the Rockies have to start doing something. We have to see the breakout Ryan McMahon season and the breakout Brendan Rodgers season. And the Chris Bryant deal is just going to be a situation they're going to have to deal with going forward. But I think the Rockies really believe in these young guys they have, especially those 3 that I mentioned, Tovar, Jones, and Doyle. They also have some more exciting prospects along the way. So how they handle the trade deadline, I think, this year is really going to show us where this team is at, because I think the Mariners and the Rockies are a perfect trade partners here. I think the Mariners could benefit from a Ryan McMahon or a Brendan Rodgers. It's just a matter of can the Rockies get that deal done. So I think they're starting to form an identity, them thinking that the next opportunity is with these younger guys, but they have all of these contracts with veteran players that they're either going to stick with and block prospects, or they're going to have to make some moves and figure out what they're going to do with them, because you can't stick with all of these guys when you have a bunch of exciting prospects ready to knock on the door as well in certain positions.
Nothing piques people's interest like potential trade candidates, Paul. You know that. So you've just told everybody to listen closely here. Paul Holden joining us here on Extra Innings. And Paul, a weird scene in Major League Baseball this week was the Kyle Freeland situation with the Rockies, who is still scheduled to be Saturday's starter. It looks like he will still be able to throw. It was his non-pitching hand that was injured. Take us into that whole situation, because, I mean, it looked like it was very avoidable, not just that night, but I believe, didn't Chris Bryant's injury have something to do with the reason why Freeland was out there?
Yeah, so basically setting the stage here, Chris Bryant, a couple of days before this play in Toronto, tweaks his back as he's going back. So they don't officially put Bryant on the IL, I believe, until yesterday or 2 days ago. And then at that time, when the Rockies get to Philly, they have been hit by a stomach bug. So they trade for Jake Cave, who's their bench guy. He wasn't at the ballpark that night, completely unavailable. And Brendan Rodgers was unavailable as well because he was sick. So they got hit with this bug, and so their bench is completely depleted. It's a 1-1 ball game with the Rockies, and Elias Diaz, the Rockies catcher, those who went to the All-Star game might remember that name.
MVP of the game,
he hits a double, and he's a catcher. He's not speed, not in the wheelhouse for him. So the Rockies go to Kyle Freeland, and while it's initially you sit there and you say, like, what the heck are you doing? But for Rockies fans, Kyle Freeland is really athletic. He actually he is someone that wants to be put in these positions. He is okay with these things, but basically gets to third, and then on another pass ball has a close play at the plate, which he was safe, by the way, I think. But it's a collision. He goes down and he is writhing in pain. I mean, the classic look of I hate to, if you saw Trevor Story go down earlier, where it was immediately gripping the arm, a ton of pain. He's called out. The Rockies lose in extras, but the good news is Kyle's fine. I just don't understand, even in this situation. I know you want to win a ball game, but it's April. Just let Elias Diaz run and try to win that way, even with the low bench. I there's a lot of defending of the move, and I know Kyle's ready, and I'm glad he's fine. But man, if you lose because Kyle Freeland isn't just a pitcher, he's the Rockies' number one.
Yes.
I mean, he is. You're going to see him to start this series against the Mariners. I mean, he is a pitcher the Rockies simply cannot afford to lose. And if they were to have lost him in that fashion, it would have just been, the Rockies a bigger laughingstock, and they were that night because it looked like by the picture that Kyle hurt himself. So, there's some defending there, but for me, it's a game in April. You're in the middle of a skid. I think it's okay to let Diaz out there to just try to finish it, even though I know you're trying to win some ball games and snap a skid. I wouldn't have risked running my pitcher in that situation.
Yeah, there was no win in that situation, especially this early, like you said, Paul. I mean, just and knowing the amount of games that we have left in this season, running your number one guy, and I know Freeland hasn't had the start to the season that he's hoping for, but I imagine an injury like that, or a potential injury like that, is not going to help causes. Paul, give the people a plug here. Where can they find you on YouTube? Where can they follow you on Twitter so they can continue to follow your Rockies coverage this weekend?
We talk Rockies baseball Monday through Friday on their Locked On Rockies podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Locked On Rockies. We're also available on your favorite streaming services. We're on Twitter at LO Rockies. That's where you want to go if you want to keep up to date with the Rockies baseball. My normal Twitter is just me talking about video games usually half the time. So head on over to the Locked On Rockies stuff. We're talking Rockies every day, and I'm going to be really interested to see how this Mariners pitching staff handles Coors Field this weekend.
Paul Holden of the Locked On Rockies podcast joining us on the Emerald Queen Casino Sportsbook Hotline. Paul, really appreciate you carving out some time here on this Thursday to preview this series, and have a good time watching it. I know that might be a little harder these days with this Rockies team, but should be a fun one.
Hey, beautiful weather here in the Pacific Northwest to watch some baseball. Can't complain. Curtis, thank you so much.
Welcome in.
Okay, so yeah, that was my appearance on Seattle Sports 710 yesterday. Just breaking down things, previewing the series. I always love the opportunity to get on the radio. All right, quick break, and then we're gonna wind down the show here today with the secret. I think if the Rockies are gonna win this series, it's because they're gonna do this, and we're gonna talk about that coming up here on today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about some of the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. That could be strikeouts, base hits, home runs. If you're going baseball, it can be rebounds, three-pointers, assists. In basketball, goals, and hockey, a whole wide variety. All you do, look at the stats, test your knowledge, and you can win big. You can get in on the playoff action and win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during the basketball postseason. PrizePicks is something for every sports fan, from baseball and basketball to League of Legends and everything in between. You can pick LeBron, Shohei, Connor McDavid, all in the same entry. Download the app today, the PrizePicks app today, and use code LOCKEDONMLB. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. When you download the PrizePicks app today, use that code LOCKEDONMLB and get that first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast, free and streaming on your favorite streaming services. Hey, you can get all your Rockies play-by-play action tonight and throughout the weekend on SiriusXM and the SiriusXM app. Just search Colorado Rockies on SiriusXM or SiriusXM app. You'll be taken to where you need to go, and you can jam out alongside the hometown broadcast. Maybe you want to check out the Mariners broadcast. Mariners broadcast, great, by the way. If you're looking to mix things up this weekend, I really do like the Mariners broadcasters, both on the TV and the radio side. I worked on the radio side, so I guess I'll throw that disclaimer a little bit, but they got a great booth. If you like to check out other teams broadcast teams, I highly suggest listening to the Mariners here at some point this season. I really like their broadcast as well. The key here, if the Rockies are going to beat the Mariners, if the Rockies are going to win this series, if they're going to do it, it's going to be due to the long ball. The biggest issue when it comes to this Mariners offense is they are a team that gives up home runs. The Rockies and the Mariners have given up the same amount of home runs this year, 24. That puts them 5 away from the league lead. And it's Coors Field. So here's the moment where if you have opportunities, especially a situation runner on first or a couple of ducks on the pond, and if you can hit the uppercut of the home run, driving them in, putting up the crooked numbers, exhausting that Mariners pitching sooner rather than later, that's the key. The Rockies can't let the pitchers get into a groove. They can't let them continue to keep them off guard here. And I actually misread the schedule. Dakota Hudson is going to start again against Emerson Hancock here at the end. So the Rockies are going to have an opportunity to go up against the back end of this Mariners rotation in this ball game. Mariners are looking to get above 500. Mariners are looking to really to continue their hot stretch. This is an opportunity here for the Rockies to snap their skid and work on becoming that dominant home team. But the key here, the secret sauce to winning this series for the Rockies is to take advantage of that weakness. Hit with power and hit to leave the yard. The Rockies have to be a power hitting team in this series against the Mariners. It's going to be the secret that gets them that lets them win this game. That's going to get them over the hump and win this game, because the Rockies offensively, when you're looking at the numbers, they are a better offensive team this year. The Rockies have a higher batting average. The Rockies have scored more runs. The Rockies have more hits. They have hit less home runs, but the Rockies have a higher OBP slugging than the Mariners. So the Rockies offense is more impressive, and the Mariners have not been great on offense this season so far. They're just coming into Coors Field, and they're coming against, some pitchers here that have not been as good as they can be for the Colorado Rockies. So we're going to see how that pans out and how that goes. That's the secret. That's how you win the series. Hit home runs. Folks, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Thank you so much for joining us today and making us your first listen of the day. It's a busy time in Colorado sports, and you don't want to miss out. So make sure that you're checking out Locked On Nuggets and Locked On Avalanche every day. They're going to keep you covered with all your playoff action there. We got you covered on the Rockies side. And of course, if you need to stay up to date with your Broncos news, Locked On Broncos got you covered. And of course, up there in Boulder, Locked On Buffs holding it down as well. Find us on your favorite streaming services. Continue to comment, continue to be part of the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel by firing off your takes, letting me know what's on your mind as Rockies fans over there on the YouTube channel. And until next time, folks, this is Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.